Okay, a few minor yet not so minor points. Um, Consider Luke says, I think, I've seen the movie many times when I was a kid, The Empire Strikes Back. Luke says to Yoda something like, I'll try. And Yoda says, do or do not. There is no try. I always had a big problem with this. This has been, well, everything between Luke and Yoda is profound. Even if it's 100% wrong. Even if, in other words, even if I would have done it differently, it's still teacher-student stuff, and it takes place in a swamp. And they use ESP in order to move large objects and stuff, so it's interesting. The Force, not ESP, sorry. So anyway, do or do not. There is no try. My first hypothetical is this. Suppose Luke said, well, do you want me to do it or not? And Yoda had said, there is no do or do not. There is only try. Would have had the same effect, right? Why is that? See, you've got a whole generation of Star Wars nerds thinking that it's better to do or do not than it is to try. But my point is, the words themselves, do, do not, and try, have no inherent moral content. They have no moral valence. They're perfectly flat. They're very, very thin entirely, and they're indexical statements that are so impossibly general. They're 100% context sensitive words because they're so general. The moral force entirely depends on the fact that the fact that Yoda says it and that it rejects something that Luke is mistaken about gives you the structure of how this actually works. The fundamental presupposition is that the student must be mistaken about something. Yoda could not have said, I'll try, Luke could not have said, I'll try, and Yoda said, oh, good, yeah. Try, make sure you try real hard. Okay, so this is the first point. then I quite came up with a whole different movie based on the following concept. Okay, we remember now that Luke gets trained, he goes through Jedi training on, what the fuck is Yoda's planet called? I forget. Dagobah. I thought it was a Dagobah system. Dagobah. Okay, so the mystic from Dagobah says, do or do not, there is no try, but I'm suggesting he could very well have said, in a different training scenario or something, try, there is no do or do not. He also could have said, and I wrote this word down now, I'm not gonna, or maybe I can, maybe it'll show up here. He could have said something nonsensical. Yoda could have said, Wageth Yidlib Alkan Por Weary Yet Decked. Alkan Por Weary Yet Decked. Wageth Yidlib. And at cosplay conventions and Star Wars nerd-offs, you'd have people wandering around saying, Wageth Yidlib Al-Puriyat decked, or whatever I said. And they'd have figured out what it meant and everything. Now, but here's where I come up with a better version. See, now all of a sudden, The Empire Strikes Back becomes a real film when the following happens. So there's that scene where Vader is like, Luke is like holding on to something. They're in that big kind of like chamber inside part of the Death Star or whatever. And there are like those like catwalks or plank walks that are just like very narrow, and they go between like stuff. You know, talk to the Star Wars experts. So Luke is like hanging on, and there's like lots of vacuum, wind and stuff, and shit's blowing around, and Luke is just hanging. If he lets go, he's gonna be blown off into the ether or oblivion or whatever, We don't know what's in store. And if I remember correctly, Vader whacks Luke's hand off. So Luke's hanging on like this, and Vader has his own red lightsaber and goes whack. And what? Castrates Luke. No, castrates Luke. What do you want? That's what's going on. So, wow, the castration of St. Luke. Never thought of that. So, okay, the Dark Father castrates St. Luke. Who's the Dark Father? Could it be Satan? I don't think it's I don't think it's that simple or simplistic. Okay, just imagine that right before Vader chops off Luke's dick, Vader says, "Luke, do or do not. There is no try." Whack! You are now eunuch. Then you would have had a real fucking movie on your hands.